Right. In our course selected topics in decision modeling, we are in our 31st lecture, and now we are going to start a new topic on meta heuristics. Right. So, as a part of introduction, let us have the introductory part on the meta heuristics. Now, see, the essential idea is this, that we have a large number of optimization problems that we have to solve in different fields, and increasingly these problems are becoming complex, is all right. So, what happens, any attempt to solve them by conventional methods either fails to really solve the problems, or they become too time consuming. So, when I say time consuming, I mean probably even in years. So, here are some examples. Examples in, let us say, in airline scheduling problems, financial portfolio models, electric power and gas distributions, then scheduling problems of different type, media selection, sales territory realignment, sales call planning, supply chains, or in cutting stock problems, where you have to cut regular and irregular shapes out of paper, metals, or clothing industries. So, all these problems essentially they become very complex, and conventional methods of optimizing the finding the best possible solutions often are not very effective, or work very nicely with the conventional methods. Now, here are the competing techniques what you have, say linear or nonlinear programming. The good point about these techniques like linear and nonlinear programming is that they provide exact solutions. The other examples could be your branch and bound, which is also gives an exact solutions. But remember, the exact solutions, if you really wish to have, you have to give quite a bit of computational time to solve large problems. Is it all right? On the other hand, the methods such as heuristic and meta heuristic methods, which are essentially some sort of search techniques, they are inexact, probably can be solved in less time, but they really do not guarantee an exact solution. Is it all right? So, they really guarantee a near optimal solution. It can also be optimal solution, but it is difficult to tell whether the solution is really optimal or near optimal. So, essentially a trade off is required in heuristic and meta heuristic methods between the solution quality and computational time. Is all right. So, let us see what is the difference between the heuristic and meta heuristic methods. See, as you see examples, that subtour reversal or nearest neighborhood method that we have employed for TS problems are very good examples of heuristic methods. See, the methods are deterministic, algorithmic, iterative, but they give inexact or near optimal solutions. So, what is the difference between heuristics and meta heuristics? See, the meta heuristics, they are also use a heuristic along with randomization. Is it all right? So, I will give examples where it is understood that how randomization is made use of in meta heuristic methods. Is all right. Additionally, most of these meta heuristics are also nature inspired, right. Example, genetic algorithms, particle swarm optimization, and many such techniques. Again, as we have already said, they are inexact and have near optimal solutions. So, look at what really happens in a meta heuristic method. First of all, there is a heuristic which is really subordinate to it, and the heuristic, the meta heuristic works in an iterative manner along that subordinate heuristic, is all right. So, it is a guided random search technique. So, it is not really starting from a single point, it could be starting from multiple points and really does a random search. That means, a random process is there and it tries to explore and exploit the entire search space. See, what happens sometimes, the function may be having, suppose this side is your x, say suppose this is the x direction and this side is your functional direction. So, you may have a function which may have multiple peaks and troughs. So, when there are multiple peaks and troughs, say for example, here there is a maximum point here and there is a maximum point here, is all right. So, this is could be our global maxima, whereas the other point is our local maxima. So, between the global and local maxima, you can have the function in such a manner. So, supposing the method really starts from a given point here, it goes and it can reach the local maxima and gets trapped there. So, this is the difficulty that usually heuristic methods are having. So, what really should be done, that this trapping should not be done. Just assume, suppose you also start from another point here, then you can reach global maxima. So, between these two solutions if you compare, then you can know that the solution obtained starting from here gives you a better one. So, similar such things are possible for meta heuristic methods. So, not only that it avoids the getting trapped into local optima, but it uses the search experience in an intelligent manner and finds near optimal solutions. So, that is the essential idea of the heuristic methods. So, having known that about heuristic methods, let us look here. This is kind of you can say the the all the search techniques, how do they work out. I mean, the different types of search techniques they can be seen here. So, like we have what is known as calculus based techniques, then guided random search techniques and then enumerative techniques, right. The calculus based techniques could be either direct or indirect. So, what really happens, either you really find out a derivative or second derivative and really obtain through there, or use them in a very intelligent manner to have something like a steepest descent method or Newton's method, and use them like we have studied in our nonlinear programming, how to find the best functional value by moving towards an increasing gradient for maxima and decreasing gradient for minima. The enumerative techniques again could be depth first or breadth first, or we had also studied these dynamic programming methods, they are all can be called another class of search techniques which are really enumerative in nature. On the other hand, we have what are known as meta heuristics, they are all guided random search techniques and often they are all nature inspired, right. So, there are many such, but we are going to discuss these ones, the hill climbing method, the simulated annealing method, the taboo search method, the evolutionary algorithms, particle swarm optimization and genetic algorithms as part of evolutionary algorithms. Why they are called evolutionary? Because they happens over generations, is all right. So, we will see the details to understand what exactly are evolutionary algorithms. The essential difference, as you see from calculus based techniques or enumerative techniques, you need some special knowledge about the function, such as you need the derivatives, you need the second derivatives, or you need some kind of dynamic programming procedures. Now, question is, all of these really requires the function to be unique. You see, it is not possible to really find the derivative of functions, all functions. It is difficult to find the derivatives, or even when we find derivatives, it is very difficult to really solve the equation by putting the derivative equal to 0. So, you have seen all that. Such problems actually are not there in meta heuristics, because in a very simple language you can tell they are all answer based methods, is all right. So, if I know that a particular problem has got say 1,000,000 answers, and one of them is our best answer, but then maybe 100 of them are very good answers or excellent answers, near optimal answers. So, how to reach to one of those 100 answers out of the million by a search method? That is what we do in this meta heuristic methods, is all right. So, that is the essential idea of these methods. Now, let us look at the hill climbing method. So, what is hill climbing method? You can see here that a particular function has, there are multiple peaks and troughs, and as you can see, this point is our global maximum and this is a local maximum. But supposing we are starting our search from a random point A. Now, if we have a now look here, this is only the diagram I have shown is 2 dimensional. In a 3 dimensional, this will be a plane, is it not, and in higher dimensions this curve will actually become a hyperplane. So, supposing we start from a random point A and then identify neighboring points. So, look here on the functions, there are some neighboring points. So, suppose you choose some neighboring points and then find out what is that point where we are getting the best functional value. Now, the question is that see, there are peaks and troughs. So, you have to be very careful. Suppose our plot is like this and our point is here. So, this is also a neighboring point. So, if I go from this point to this point, not to the peak, then I miss the peak. Can you see that? Let me draw slightly bigger. So, this is a point and this is a point and this is a point. From this point, if I go to this point instead of going to this point, I have missed the peak, is all right. So, you see this point may be higher than this point, that is fine, but there are other points which are even better than this point. So, point is, when we are seeing the neighboring points, we should be careful not to really go too far, so that we should not miss the really the optimum point. So, we move, when we say neighboring points, it should be within a small region. So, move to the point the best functional value and see to it that at any point of time we really rise through the hill. See, in a 3 dimensional hill, supposing I really have a 3 dimensional hill like this. So, if I have in a point here, I can then move to a point here, another point here. So, then like you see in a road, you can really move like this. Really speaking, the idea is that at any point of time, if we are doing hill climbing, we should move to a higher point and not go to any lower point. So, that is the essential idea of the hill climbing method. So, keep on moving up and finally, you actually reach the highest point. So, that is the essential idea of hill climbing. But then the point should be also remembered that supposing we are doing hill climbing, but suppose we start a point B instead of point A, what will happen then? See, we are doing hill climbing. So, if this is my random point B, now any point which are on the other side, of point B, say point here and a point here, see this is going up and this is going down. Can you see that? So, if I take 2 points around the random point B, the hill climbing ensures that you move towards a point which is having a better functional value if we are searching maximum. So, that means we actually move up, and by moving up, we finally reach the point here, let us call it say point C, but then point C is a maximum definitely, but not the best possible point, it is a local maximum. We miss maybe point G, which is our global maximum, that means the best possible point. So, this is the difficulty of the hill climbing. The hill climbing can actually go to a point which is really not the global maximum, but it could be a local maximum or local minimum instead of the global minimum. So, these are the difficulties of the hill climbing method. So, what happens in simulated annealing, the simulated annealing technique, these specific thing has been looked into. So, what happens, supposing you start from a random point A and then you try to move uphill, you reach global maximum. But we have seen for hill climbing, if you start from a point B and do hill climbing, you reach to a local maximum. So, what is done here is that it explores the search space in such a way that a probabilistic value is actually looked into, and that probabilistic value is in such a manner, so that you can also, supposing like in earlier example, we had discussed about 2 points which are near the random point B, one is uphill and another is downhill. So, essentially in this method a probability is there to go downhill also, is all right. So, through this probability you can actually go downhill also, and when you go downhill, then obviously if you can reach the bottommost point, then you can actually move up in the other direction and you can actually reach the global maximum. Is it all right? So, this is possible in simulated annealing, which was not possible in the hill climbing method. So, if you are in a point and you are searching for neighboring points, this neighboring point search should be such that a probability will be obtained. The probability will decide whether to go up or go down, right. Both will have a chance, and through that chance really the simulated annealing method will also give a chance to avoid the local solution maxima or local optima solution and go towards a global optimum solution. So, that is the difference between hill climbing and simulated annealing method. So, as the name suggests that it is inspired by the annealing process. The annealing is essentially a process where the materials are raised to high energy level for melting, and then it is cooled to a solid state. Is it all right? The cooling should be very, very low indeed. So, that is the essential idea. Now, the probability of moving to a higher energy state is given by this formula P equal to e to the power minus del E by k T, where k is the Boltzmann's constant. Is all right. But then that is not the real point here. The real point is that as when the temperature is very high, that means in the initial point, then the probability of going downhill is rather high. That means, when you have started the iteration process, the probability of moving to a higher energy state is something, but there is also a sizable property for going to a lower energy state, that means going downhill. So, as the temperature is lowered very slowly, the best energy state is resulted, is all right. So, that is the essential idea of the simulated annealing. Now, having understood the simulated annealing process, we shall discuss them in detail in subsequent lectures, but let us get an overview today about other techniques also. See what really happens in taboo search. Taboo search is basically a guided local search procedure. So, it explores the solution space beyond local optimality and it uses what is known as the memory based strategies, right. So, an initial solution is obtained and initial memory structures and the neighborhood is explored by a certain aspiration criteria, that means which direction to the to be moved. But then also based on the previous results, that means from the memory, supposing we are at a point and we have moved to another point and we saw that that is not a very good direction. So, those directions will be blocked through a taboo restriction, is right. That is the essential, that taboo means a restrictive thing, that means do not go or do not have a transition from a point A to point B. So, it is a kind of a taboo restrictions. So, the base neighbor is selected not only by looking at the choice rules, but also looking at the taboo restrictions and the aspiration criteria, is all right. Some specialized procedures like restarting, strategic oscillation etcetera are used for choosing the best neighbor, and finally, the best possible solution is updated in a continuous manner and iteration is done till improvements are possible. So, that is the essential idea of the taboo search method. The most important part, the major portion of our lectures will really center around the evolutionary algorithms. See, as I said, these are all nature inspired. The nature inspired here, a particular chromosome like in the human race or in any population, it is the chromosome which is actually holding the what you call the nucleus of every person, all right. That means, the characteristics of a person are all there in the chromosome that the person is having. So, what really happening here, that how good is that chromosome? Suppose each chromosome really represents a solution, fitness function really evaluates how good the chromosome is all right. Then an initial population is generated and from this initial population specific methods like crossover and mutation are used to obtain offspring, right. So, you see, the first of all the reproduction process starts by the selection of the parent chromosomes. So, which parents will be selected? Those which are having higher fitness value, and then the offspring is generated out of those parents through a process which does not lose the fitness value very much, right. So, what really happens is that essential idea is from our generation to the next generation, the population becomes fitter, is all right, because the parents who are more fit, they actually come to the next generation, and from more fit next generation, I mean more fit parents, we have the offspring who take part in the next generation. So, like these, if we move several generations, we have highly fit chromosomes, or in this case the solutions, and obviously we have reaching towards the best possible solution by this method. As you know that the genetic algorithms are the most important family member of the evolutionary computing techniques. These are intelligent search techniques maintaining a population of candidate solutions for a given problem, which search the solution space by applying various variation operators, right. The robustness is the key, and the essential idea is that there should be a balance between selection pressure and population diversity. You see, what is selection pressure? We search from a population of points, not a single point. So, if I have a search space, then I start from many points, not just one point, right. And which point should be chosen? Those points which are really having higher fitness values, right. So, that is the selection pressure, but at the same time we must really have points from all over the region, which is known as the population diversity, so that we explore the entire population rather than explore only a small portion of the population. So, advantage that we have is that we do not get stuck in local optima. So, like this we will discuss more about this. It uses probabilistic transitions rules, not deterministic ones, right. A particular variant is a particle swarm optimization. Again, this is a robust optimization method. A swarm of particles fly over a search space to local global optimum, and the particles communicate directly or indirectly with one another using search directions. So, it is like that we have the entire search space, and in this search space we randomly have all these particle swarms. So, different particles are at different points of the search space, and then we have x vector, p vector and v vector, and then in every subsequent generations those particles keep moving, right. The moving in such a manner, so that the the fitness or equivalent of fitness really improves, all right. So, that is what happens. The particle moves towards the best position, that is the p best, and the global best positions, that is g best. So, there are two best, one is the g best, another is p best. G best is the global best position of all the particles, and p best is the best position of a given particle, is all right. So, a combination of p best and b best is made for every particle to make a move in the every subsequent generation. So, when all these particles keep moving at a given point, what will happen? All the particles will really move towards the best possible solutions, right. So, that is generally the particle swarm optimization process. So, there are many other evolutionary computing methods like ant colony optimization, the BAT algorithm, the bacterial foraging and so on, but we shall really keep our discussion concentrated on these many processes that we discussed here. Now, there are various applications of meta heuristic methods in solving NP hard problems like TS problems, airline scheduling or flow shop scheduling problems, and in search problems in different kinds of pattern recognition, automatic clustering or machine learning processes, and obviously all those application areas which I told right in the beginning, right. So, there are wide applications of meta heuristics, and we shall explore this in this particular set of lectures. Thank you very much.